Hello, my name is Kathryn Bruder, and today I'm going to be reading and analyzing 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird by Wallace Stevens. 1. Among 20 snowy mountains, the only moving thing was the eye of a blackbird. 2. I was of 3 minds, like a tree in which there are 3 blackbirds. 3. The blackbird whirled in the autumn winds. It was a small part of the pantomime. 4. A man and a woman are one. A man and a woman and a blackbird are one. 5. I do not know which to prefer, the beauty of inflections or the beauty of innuendos, the blackbird whistling or just after. 6. Icicles filled the long window with barbaric glass. The shadow of the blackbird crossed it to and fro. The mood traced in the shadow an indecipherable cause. 7. O thin men of Haddam, why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see how the blackbird walks around the feet of the woman about you? 8. I know noble accents and lucid inescapable rhythms, but I know too that the blackbird is involved in what I know. 9. When the blackbird flew out of sight, it marked the edge of one of many circles. 10. At the sight of the blackbirds flying in a green light, even the bawds of euphony would cry out sharply. 11. He rode over Connecticut in a glass coach. Once a fear pierced him, in that he mistook the shadow of his equipage for blackbirds. 12. The river is moving. The blackbird must be flying. 13. It was evening all afternoon. It was snowing, and it was going to snow. The blackbird sat in the cedar limbs. Okay, so to make this a bit easier, I already annotated it. First of all, I would just like to mention that blackbird in general, I take it to mean death, since it also kind of is connected with winter, which also means death. So let's just look at the first stanza first. Among 20 snowy mountains, the only moving thing was the eye of the blackbird. So the blackbird is on this high mountain, and he's looking with his eye, just kind of symbolizing, in my opinion, how death in reality is above everything, and he's always watching, I guess. Stanza 2, I was of 3 minds. 3, that kind of reminds me of the Holy Trinity there. Like a tree, sadly I don't know if the tree is alive or dead, but that might have contributed to the symbolism, in which there are 3, here's the Holy Trinity again, blackbirds. So, I guess the Holy Trinity would just mean afterlife in this case, because it does reference blackbirds, but just something to think about. Oh, also I forgot to mention this generally, but 13, I don't know if you consider that an unlucky number, but that's just something to think about. But also, pretty much every stanza talks about death, and it just talks about the blackbird in a different way. So I kind of think of it like, no matter how you slice and dice it, death is pretty inevitable. Okay, which one? Okay, I think I was on number 3. So the blackbird whirled in the autumn winds. It was a small part of the pantomime. Pantomime meaning gesture, just because I forgot what that word meant. But I guess, unless if you consider the snow, I don't think it's really winter yet, or it's almost winter, but it's not quite there yet. But the blackbird definitely symbolizes that it's in the last stages of moving from autumn to winter, just kind of, symbolizing death yet again. Death is coming, winter is coming. So the interesting thing about these 2 stanzas, and only these 2 stanzas alone, and they happen to be right next to each other, is they both kind of have the same, repetitive pattern. I don't really know what to call this, but I'll just explain it as I go. So number 4, a man and a woman are one, a man and a woman and a blackbird are one. So I kind of think about that like, no matter if you're a man or a woman, you can't avoid death. A man and a woman and a blackbird, a man and a woman and death are one. So this pattern will make a little bit of sense in the next one. 5. I do not know which to prefer, the beauty of inflections or the beauty of innuendos. The blackbird is whistling or just after. So because this repetitive pattern is linked with this one, it's kind of like they're equal to each other. So the blackbird whistling is the inflection. Kind of makes sense because whistling is inflection means like modulation of a voice. So modulation, whistling, that kind of makes sense. Or the beauty of innuendos or just after. This one doesn't make as much sense, but I guess it could be an allusion to the lack of life since they're not whistling anymore, so now all signs of life are gone. That's a bit of a stretch, but it's just something to think about. 6, icicles filled the long window. Window is pretty significant because you normally think of windows with life, clarity, bringing in light, so heaven, with barbaric glass. I don't know what that word barbaric means in this context. Like, well, how would you use it or consider it? But moving on, the shadow of a blackbird crossed it to and fro, the mood, traced in the shadow an indecipherable cause. Okay, so there's some haziness going on here. Since shadow, indecipherable, just a bit of darkness in a place that's normally supposed to be pretty light. So death confuses things and it just overshadows what would normally be light and life. Number 7. Oh Man of Hadam. I looked it up. Or Hedem. I don't really know how to pronounce it. It's a town in Connecticut, guys. I looked it up. Yeah, it's pretty much set in Connecticut because it references the state a little later too. Why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see how the blackbird walks around the feet of the woman around you? This one is interesting. I think this one's one of my favorites. Because golden birds, people normally, people don't like to think about death all the time. They want to soar in life. They want to be a bird. They want to fly and they want to succeed. And they want to succeed while they're alive. So, but the author is like, well, why do you imagine golden birds when there are these blackbirds right under your feet, right under your nose? That's closer than actual success in life. This is it's kind of interesting because it's kind of a contradiction to what we saw in the very first stanza where the blackbird was above everything. So maybe like humans treat death like they're above it, but they're really not. I know noble accents and lucid, inescapable rhythms, but I know too that the blackbird is involved in what I know. This one's the hardest one. Noble accents, lucid, inescapable rhythms. I think it has to do with the people again, because I tried to connect it with like maybe the call of the blackbird, but I saw the word noble and lucid meaning like clear and vivid, inescapable rhythms. So maybe it's talking about how humans will like to be all diplomatic and dignified and respectful while they're alive, but like they can never avoid just the harsh brutality of just, well, not brutal all the time, but just death. It's pretty harsh. So yeah, even if you want to act respectful while you're alive, the blackbird is still lurking around the corner. Number 9, when the blackbird flew out of sight, it marked the edge of one of many circles. This one's kind of cool. Okay, so this poem was written in like the age of Cubism. So that's kind of where this allusion came from. But if you think about circles literally, outside of that context, go back to pre-calc for a little bit. The radius is the same all around, so it's a perfect shape. So you think of circle, you think of perfection, right? So the blackbird's not there for a second. You can't see him. So everything looks like it's perfect, but maybe not. I don't know. That one's a bit of a stretch too. Number 10, at the sight of blackbirds flying in a green light. Holy cow, this one's big. Green, meaning like spring and light and regeneration. Well, I guess there's light right here. So light meaning like heaven and happiness. Even the bawds of euphony would cry out sharply. I would cry out sharply too if death just kind of intruded on my party of green light. Number 11, he rode over Connecticut in a glass coach. There's glass again. I think the window was in stanza 6. So, I didn't finish. Once a fear pierced him, and that he mistook the shadow of his equipage for blackbirds. So he's riding in a glass coach, he's letting light in, he's letting heaven and happiness in, but death, the fear and the just inevitability of death will always plague literally anything ever. You can escape death no matter how far you travel. So you can ride, and it's pretty clear that he's traveling because he has his baggage and he's riding. No matter how far you travel, you can't escape it. 12. The river is moving, the blackbird must be flying. This one's a bit tricky too, and it's a bit of a stretch, but when I think of river, you think of like life, and it's most definitely on like the ground where the air is like kind of the opposite of the ground, if you can think of it like that. So life and death are opposites, and you need that balance in life. That's a bit of a stretch, but it's another way to think of death, so that's why he put it in here. 13, it was evening all afternoon. All right, it's officially winter. It's snowing. I love how he ended this poem because winter is kind of, the end of life. It signifies the end of the year for us and our calendar. And he ends the poem with the end of life, so it's kind of complements that. And then look, there's a nice little bit of imagery at the end. So I'm sorry that a couple of those analyses were a bit of a stretch, but that's just kind of how I interpreted it. And I'm sorry this was so long. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.